Hello. I usually don't really do reviews or anything like that, but my channel is just a place for random things that I'm feeling in the moment. I'd like to discuss a movie I saw recently, the film Whitesnake from Light Chaser Animation. Whitesnake is a Chinese kids film about the story of the white snake, which is a very old play, one of your classic lover's tragedy stories from, I have to check what year, but quite a while ago. Whitesnake is obviously taking quite a few liberties. I wouldn't say it's necessarily Disneyfying it, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily an incorrect take to say either. The story is essentially that there is a character called, the white snake. She doesn't really have another name, who is a snake that has learned through magic to take human form. She falls in love with a human, and tragedy sort of ensues as she's pushed between two worlds. The movie adaptation goes a little bit more... Well, I haven't fully read the original, so I don't know how many full liberties are being taken. But in this film, Whitesnake is sent to assassinate a Taoist wizard, as they describe him in the English translation. And during the process, she has her memories erased, where she is found by a doctor in a small village, brought back to health, and then her former compatriots think she may have betrayed them, while also being hunted by the Taoist wizard. The film's first two acts, I feel, were rushed. It genuinely felt that they were worried they were going to run out of time in the first two acts. And the pacing just went very quickly. And as an American who is unfamiliar with the original story, other than just a skimming that I did a very long time ago that actually led me to buy this film, I was thoroughly lost. Around the third act, they slow down a bit. And to be clear, I wasn't lost in the sense that the plot was hard to follow. But a lot of exposition and necessary world building and expectations, I feel as if the filmmakers assumed familiarity with at least the outline of the story, and thus did not feel the need they needed to explain that. And thus it was a little confusing for a bit, but I'm used to picking up on these things. I used to watch a lot of anime in my youth, and I know that's Japanese and this is Chinese, but in the sense of reading a story from a different culture, where they expect you to have familiarity with a story you don't, and so you just kind of have to pick up on those little clues and just go, okay, I don't fully get it, but I'm sure it'll click. And it did click eventually. Around the third act, though, it starts slowing down, and I think this is actually what saves the movie for me. I actually had a really terrible opinion of the film until about the point where you get the classic third act. The two main characters reject each other despite being love interests, and then the big tragic sad thing happens, and I think there's a term for this, like the third act betrayal and the fourth act reunion, though they do a twist on this, and I will say they had some guts for what they did, but I'll explain that when I'm more willing to go into spoilers with a little warning later on. And so I left the film. It was on Blu-ray, for the record. I bought this years ago when I became interested in Chinese animation, since I am an animation aficionado, and I realized that I have watched animation from the UK and France and Japan, and some even from Canada, of course, America. I feel like some from South America, but I realized I never really watched anything from China. Some stuff from Korea, so I thought I'd give some Chinese films a try. And this was just one of the ones at the time, and then I just completely forgot about it. I have it there with another film about people, I think, fighting the gods or something, and I still haven't watched that one. So recently I just finally sat down and watched it, and it's from a while back. It's from 2019. It should be said for the record, but by the end of the film, I had a much better opinion of it. I actually left thinking that this was okay, even if there were moments when I really did want to just turn off. I'll be honest, there are moments in the second act where I legitimately wanted to turn off the TV. And the reason for that, I think this should be noted, is due to cultural differences. And don't worry, I'm not going to say something offensive about China. This movie is sometimes misadvertised in America. And what I mean is, I saw some places say this movie was for adults, and upon watching it, that is not true. As is similar to what I noticed, so I don't know if it's just a general thing in East Asia. I know there are different countries and their cultures. Some aren't the same, and there's a lot of bad blood there. But sometimes when you're physically nearby someone, it can influence each other. But there is some violence that's pretty graphic in the film. She impales some people with a spear. She cuts another snake person up into chunks while he's in snake form. Someone's soul gets ripped out, and they are explicitly stated to no longer be able to reincarnate, which is one of those, not that visually messed up stuff, but when you think about it for a second, that's actually really grim. That is true death from this world's cosmology. And as a result, some places listed this as for adults, but in reality, this is 100% a kid's film. And I think it's just simply the case that in China, and I cannot say this with certainty, that this is not viewed as something you can't show children. And, this is just a common thing that happens whenever you deal with media from different countries. Over the years, due to America being a large market, a lot of countries have kind of conformed themselves to American standards on things like violence and even nudity. To be honest, that actually can vary quite a bit. And it's not really the case here, and possibly due to, I don't need to tell you, probably due to China and America's bad blood and everything related to that. Not to mention that most films that enter the United States are carefully controlled, not in like some sort of conspiracy. Well, I guess technically it's a conspiracy, but it's open. They don't import a lot of movies. It's a protectionist policy in the country, and they also don't like some values our movies say, which, I don't want to get too political, but that's just a thing. And that actually allows me to segue into something that I noticed quite a bit in the film, which, and this has happened before, I've heard in Chinese media, so this is not too surprising to me. But I do think the characters of White Snake and Green Snake were originally written as a romantic couple, and that this was meant to be a bit of a tension. And I think it's still very much in the film, but it's heavily censored, where it's very clear that Green Snake is in love with White Snake, and that she wants to be with White Snake, and that's why she's so willing to go to these lengths and feels threatened by her interest in the male lead. And it's still very heavily there, including the line where Green Snake says that just being held is the same kind of experience, implying these things. They bathe naked together, and she longingly touches her quite a few times. And all I can think of when I saw those scenes was that China does not allow depictions. I don't remember when this went into law, but China banned depictions of homosexuals in media, and or any member of the LGBT community in media. And as a result, as someone who grew up during an era where that was the same case in the United States, I can see, very obviously gay-coded characters that the writers wanted to write, but they had to throw in the word sister, even though canonically they are not related in the story either. So make of that what you will. They are very much in a situationship, if you're familiar with the term. Now, the overall plot is pretty basic. She goes to assassinate the general. She gets amnesia. She's found by the doctor. They go out to find out more about her hairpin, which they think is magical, and it is magical. They find out a bit more about her backstory. Green Snake comes after her because the witch thinks that she betrayed them all. This leads to her regaining her memories and going to kill the general. The general's men are coming to attack the village and attack them. This incident leads Whitesnake to take her true demon form. She attacks indiscriminately, forgetting herself. The male love interest, feeling that he can't be with her as a human, sells his soul to become a demon, which is a whole thing that actually, I kind of knew something was up once he did that, so what's going to happen later didn't surprise me too much. Well, it did surprise me, even though I knew a bit of the original story and knew it was a tragedy, but back to the plot summary a bit there. She's going to end up attacking the main village because that's where the general is. He kind of reaches out to her. General takes advantage of this. There's a big fight. Third act villain twist, and with the leader of the Snake Clan. And then pretty much everyone other than Whitesnake and Great Snake dies, and that's the end of the story. Oh, and the dog talks. The dog talking, by the way, was like one of the I had already figured out this was actually really a kid's film, and that honestly, I figured out when I realized Kids had actually brought it to America, but like it really clicked when the dog started talking. That was one of the most obvious, oh, this is really a kid's film moments for me. But they really did have some guts, though, because they killed the male love interest off. And for a moment, I actually thought they were willing to go so far as having him die in such a way that he can't reincarnate. They pulled back on that, and I think that's honestly for the best. It would have been a little much. I mean, there was probably already kids crying over this, so a little much to go the extra mile and say that he can never reincarnate again. Though it did lead to a weird conclusion where she decides that even though he's reincarnated a bunch of times and isn't the same person anymore, that she still wants to be with him. And on one hand, that's very romantic and sweet. On the other hand, though, I had recently learned through other means that there's these big push in Chinese media that women should remarry. And I don't know how true this is, but I heard about that, and that it might only be true among conservatives in China, and that it's frowned upon. So it did stick in the back of my craw, but take that with a grain of salt. That came from a drama video about gotcha, so it's not an educated thing. So if you know more about it, you're probably correct, and I'm probably wrong. Overall, though, it was all right as a kid's movie. As an adult watching it, someone who is not only old enough to do to pay taxes, but as someone who literally filed taxes for other people for 5 years, which is a thing you can do in the United States as a profession, it was a little rough to get through. But I think if you were the parent of a young child and you're okay with some depictions of violence, you'd probably be fine. If nothing else, you'd be visually excited because, oh, wait, actually, I just remembered, though, there is one scene I should mention if you're going to show this to kids. I just remembered one scene. I'll get back to that in a second. Something just popped into my brain. You might actually not want to show this to kids because I just remembered a scene. But I will just finish this thought, though. Beautiful animation throughout. Like, literally, the animation is really, really, really well done. Just throughout the entire film, I thought it was a visual spectacle. They really did a great job in the fight choreography, the colors, all of that. That was just overall very beautiful film. Visually very beautiful. I cannot complain about that. That was stellar done animation. They really did a great job there on a technical level. And the fight choreography looked really, really good. Going back to that scene that maybe if you have kids, you probably don't want to show them, there is also a sex scene in the film. And I remember that raising an eyebrow because even though most of the film is definitely aimed at children, it's hard not to view it that way with the writing. And maybe this is the English translation, maybe it's the delivery of the English actors, but it feels aimed at kids. But then there's this scene where she straight up takes her top off. You don't see anything, it's only from the back, and they kiss, and it's super heavily implied they made love. And I'm not saying kids' movies, even in the United States, haven't done stuff like this, but they usually don't go so far as having the female lead become nude. Usually they'll just kiss and cut away or something and let the adults in the room know what happened, but the kids have no idea. But they went the extra mile on this, and that actually might, if you're a parent, you might not want to show that. Actually, it's a bit much. It's a bit much, but I feel like the writing, once again, this might boil down to cultural differences, because the writing feels for kids. This feels like a kid's movie, but then I remembered that scene, and that scene is not for kids. I'm not trying to oversell it here, by the way. it's not that explicit. And this might be my puritanical American upbringing going, oh my God, she showed her bared back and she kissed and they were implied to lay on the top of each other and then cut to black, which is basically a play-by-play of that scene. But for me, I'm like, oh, that's okay, That's like, maybe it's me though. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's cultural differences. Maybe this actually is an adult film and I'm unintentionally insulting its writing. But it feels like a kid's movie. Other than that scene and the violence, it feels like a kid's movie when you look at the writing, the plot, all of that. Speaking of the plot, I do want to discuss the third act villain twist because I feel it wasn't well done. It's on one hand a mile coming away. When Whitesnake's wizard teacher is shown, you take one look at this woman, and other than just wanting to have her digits because, call me girl, she's going to be a villain. Like, visually, this woman is screaming evil wizard. And the film sets it up, but when it happens, it doesn't make sense. Now, this could be, I don't speak Mandarin or Cantonese or any of the major languages spoken in mainland China, but I cannot confirm the original delivery meant, and if this is an issue of translation or the delivery of the actress. But when they defeat the general, and she is sitting there, and she is going, ah, yes, he could steal the people's power, so I can too. And she takes back the magic she gave other people because they have been adding their own magic to themselves, and when she takes it back and makes her stronger, which is a brief aside, I've actually always thought that's really cool in fiction and is a good way of having a villain who seems benevolent but is really evil, is that she's really farming power out of people like that. I've always liked that, so that was a good touch. It didn't feel like she had planned this. If that was the plan from day one, I would go, makes sense. She was just doing this for a common goal, and now that the common goal is gone, she's calling the magic back to make herself like the king of everything. Makes sense. But it sounds like she just thought of that because she just realized that she could steal power, even though she would have been aware of this the whole time. It's how the delivery, at least in the English version, feels, and it just makes the third act twist not work because you're just left thinking, did you really just think of that just now? Really? Like, not at any other time? It's just how it feels, it's just how it feels. And I wonder if anyone else got that vibe, that it just didn't work that well as a twist. I mean, honestly, the movie has a villain problem. They are mostly distant. They are very weak personality-wise. Some of them I couldn't even really tell you about, and so, like the wizard who works under the general, who is a recurring major antagonist in the film, but I don't think he even gets named. The general doesn't even get named, and I'm not even sure if the wizard gets named in the film. And as a result, I think they all go by titles. I think he's the wizard, he's the general, and she's just like the mentor, the teacher, or master. And it's like, they just feel there. And on one hand, you don't need that necessarily to tell a good story. But you definitely notice when a very traditional adventure story like this doesn't have a strong villain. It is noticeable. And it is present for sure. It definitely, or lack of present. Overall, though, I would still say this film was alright. I don't think it's the best film I've ever seen by a milestone, and I've definitely seen better 3D animated works from other countries and what have you. But did I enjoy the experience? Well, by the end of the scene, yes, I did enjoy it. As a parting thought, though, because I think I've really gone out most of what I wanted to say. There might be some edits in, if any thoughts come in while I'm editing this video, but can we just discuss how the Fox character, the one who sold the hairpin and has magic items, that she exists for the simple reason that one of the animators clearly has like a foot or leg fetish. It's one of the two, but they clearly have it. Like, every shot emphasizes her legs. There is almost a Tarantino-esque shot where she puts her her feet on the chair. And I don't have a fetish for legs or feet. That's not where this is going. It just was off-putting for me because like I'm friends with a lot of like artists who make content like that, pornographic content, and so I know like what it means to like from talking with them what it means to like try to play to the fetish, and so I'm just like, someone here is just horny for feet and legs. Because these are some fetishy shots, but maybe my brain is just brain rotted. It's hard to say, but yeah, that's Whitesnake. Like I said, it's all right. Is it for kids? That is definitely questionable due to some of the violence in that one scene, but it's definitely written for kids. So it's one of those cases again where it boils down to, I think, different cultural expectations of what is acceptable in that kind of media. Would I recommend it? It's hard to say. It's very beautiful to look at, but like I said, though, there is a point in the middle of that second act where I was completely tuned out. And the first act, I was only really tuned in because I was having trouble following. It wasn't until the third act where I actually thought I was enjoying myself. So, it really, really depends. But hey, if you want to see something from China, it's the first one I saw, so I really can't say if it's the best. And also, there is a sequel called Green Snake, which I fully expect they try to make her have a hetero romance in that movie. But hey, bi people exist, and she was definitely gay in the first movie. And that's on Netflix, so you could watch that. And it has like a post-apocalyptic thing, so that kind of looks cool. I might watch that later. But yeah, if you're interested, I got it out of Shout Factory, and it's distributed by GKIDS. So, if you want to give it a shot, give it a try. I haven't ever done like a review, not to my knowledge, so, I'm not sure how to end this, but what I will say is just a quick little disclaimer. I am mostly a TRPG dev. I watch films casually. I am not really what I would call a cinephile, though people have jokingly called me that, because when I ran a movie night once for a group of people, all the films I picked, they were all like, what the fuck is The Neverending Story? What is Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind? What is They Live? Why can't we watch the FNAF movie or the Minecraft movie? Oh, and I'm just like, what the fuck is Drive? But I wouldn't call myself a cinephile, and I definitely am not a expert. I'm just someone who's probably like, if there's like level 1 where you just watch Marvel movies and like Star Wars flicks, and like level 2 is when you watch slightly different films, I'm probably at level 2. I'm not sure what level 3, 4, and 5 is. I think at level 5, you genuinely enjoy that movie where it's just zooming in on a wall for like 4 fucking hours, and you could write an entire thing. I think that's called like waveform or shut some shit, and you could write a term paper about how you jizz all over that film. I guess that's probably what level 5 is. I'm at level 2. Well, anyway, and I think there's value in an opinion like that. I know we're bombarded with unqualified opinions, but hey, listen, it is what it is. You don't have to listen, I guess. And yeah, I don't know how to sign off on a video, so I am going to say memento mori and good day.